When I went to see my internist after my procedure, I said to him, within 5 years, the trust biopsy is going to be a piece of ancient history. And it should be. If you have localized cancer, if it can be identified with an MRI, I don't know why anyone that practices medicine would not say to his patient, you need to get this treated focally.
And so I think there's some definite
I'm the CEO of a company headquartered in Denver. We're in the business of developing a couple of major plastics and chemicals companies in the Midwest and also on the Gulf Coast. I'm a pretty active and engaged person in his mid-60s that still loves to work. Sometime in my mid to late 40s, I started getting, an annual baseline PSA, and as I best can recall it now, we started below 1, and every once in a while it would go a little bit over 1, a little bit under 1, and then a couple of years ago it just started rising. And my doctor kept on saying, we need to pay attention to this, but because all he said was pay attention to it, I didn't pay attention to it. I should have. In about December of 2014, my doctor said, your PSA's hit 4.4. We need to do something. We need to consult with a urologist. This is getting into the zone where we need to think about whether or not additional steps and diagnostic things need to be done for prostate cancer. I was out of the country in Canada, and I started doing a lot of research on my own. And the research that I did all of a sudden led me to the concept of multi-parametric MRIs. Literally the day that my trust biopsy was scheduled, I called my urologist's office and I said, I'm just going to have to postpone this. I've got some questions for you. They called me back that evening and scheduled an appointment with me with the urologist the next day. And I went in and I said, I've been reading about these multi-parametric MRIs. The urologist said, I don't understand why you'd want to do something like that because it uses an endorectal coil. It's very painful. It doesn't really tell us anything because the only diagnosis is really just getting a biopsy. And, I certainly was not in a position, as a chemist to argue with a physician, but I did know that since my physician was not aware of the fact that there was a 3 Tesla MRI that didn't involve an endorectal coil, I decided that this was not a physician that I could trust or have any confidence in. So I scheduled an MRI at Stanford for September of 2015. I met with the folks there. They were, very, very informed and very, very helpful, and they said, we can schedule this, we'll go ahead and do it, and then we'll consult with you after we get the results. So the results came back on September 25th of 2015, and it showed, and no doubt about it, 1 centimeter PIRADS 4 lesion in my prostate. It looked like I didn't have anything other than the 1 lesion, but with a PIRADS 4, they basically said that the chances of clinically significant cancer were pretty high. In other words, I had cancer. My research sped up quite a bit after I got the cancer diagnosis, at least from the MRI, and I decided that this focal treatment that the folks at Stanford mentioned, I needed to get better informed about. One of the things that I was immediately led to is the very excellent website that Dr. Sperling maintains. I spoke with Dr. Sperling's office. I ended up speaking with his head nurse, Lillian, and Lillian said, send us the CD-ROM of your MRI, and Dr. Sperling will get on the phone with you. And that is what I did. And literally within a day of them getting the MRI, Dr. Sperling gave me a call. He said, it looks like you do have a clinically significant lesion, and here's what we can do. We can schedule you to have a biopsy next week. We can get the results 24 hours later. Dr. Sperling also said if the biopsy confirms what we're seeing with the MRI, we can schedule a focal laser ablation the next day. When Dr. Sperling showed me the with and without contrast media MRI, I could see a big white spot. That's cancer. I could see that. And I could see where when he sampled at the edges with the very precise guidance of MRI, he could say that this was a little bit of cancer here. And that's a very good example of when you get this blind trust biopsy, they could come back and say, well, we found your cancer and it's a Gleason 6. Well, at the edge of my cancer, it was a Gleason 6. But in the middle of my cancer, it was not just a Gleason 7, but it was a Gleason 4 times 3/7. It was this very significant cancer, even though it was very small. I came back the day after the results of the biopsy were done, and they prepared me to do the ablation. They gave me some Valium, they gave me 1 shot of lidocaine and nerve block, and when they started the ablation, it was uncomfortable for just a moment. I felt some heat, and I immediately signaled by pumping on the bulb that they have there. Dr. Sperling immediately said, "What is it?" I said, "I feel it." He gave me another shot. They continued the ablation. I felt nothing. When I came back to Denver after a week, just the fact that I knew that I was out from under the cloud of the cancer, I felt on top of the world. I wanted to work out maybe more than I would have normally worked out. You feel good. The fact that the cancer is gone takes just a huge mental burden off of you. One of the things that you observe is that, if you have to have surgery or radiation, you have to tell your colleagues, I'm going to be off the grid for a while. I'm going to have, complications, and I'm going to have things I have to deal with. With focal laser ablation, you don't.
There's a peninsula that goes out. That's where
And I tell my young colleagues here, don't worry about the 4 number or the 4 or 5 number. If your PSA goes from 1 to 3, then you need to think about getting an MRI done. And if you have to pay for it yourself, we're only talking about your health. We're only talking about cancer. We're only talking about avoiding incontinence, avoiding, erectile dysfunction. Get an MRI, be proactive. I was proactive. I found Dr. Sperling, and I'm just so thankful that I did.